Hello everyone, and welcome back to Warships Blitz with Terry. Finally, we're back to ships. And today, I figured, since I don't have much time still this week, we'll look at something quick that I think may not be completely understood by a lot of players, especially new players. And that's the consumables that we have here. And we have two. We have the repair party, or repair kit as it's called, and we have the damage control party, or damage control kit. So what are these doing, and how should you be using them? These consumables are renewed at the beginning of every battle, provided you have the auto resupply ticked, and I think that's by default the case. Normally, ships pack 3 consumables of each of them. The repair consumable, that's literally what it says on the tin. Within 10 seconds, it restores around about 14% of your maximum HP. Right, so if your maximum HP is 10,000, it'll restore 1400 HP. And within a time of 10 seconds. So you don't get instantly 1400 HP, but you get them within 10 seconds, they're coming back. The other thing that's being mentioned here, it has a cooldown time of 90 seconds. Now battles last somewhere between 6 and 7 minutes. Now you can do the math. If it takes a minute and a half until your repair kit is off cooldown and you can use it again, this tells us that you really want to use your repair party or your repair kit as early as possible. Effectively, once you're down enough health that your repair kit would come into full effect, so you're a little bit over 14% of your maximum HP, you use the first one immediately. There's not even a need to talk about. Now the standard ones that we write here do cost 1,000 silver per piece. So if you use up all 3, you have an expense of 3,000 silver. That gets automatically deducted if you do the resupply check at the end of the battle. But the fact that you used it early as possible means that by the time your battle is around halfway through, you've got it off cooldown and you can use it again. Which also means that your ship has effectively 3 chances to be repaired throughout the course of the battle. Whereas if you were to use it, let's say when you're down just below half of your health, you use the first one, you still only get 14% of your maximum health back. It's the same absolute number. But it's going to take 90 seconds until you can use it again. Which means by that time, probably the battle is almost over. Now, the damage control kit, in the description here, mentions that it suppresses fire and flooding. And it does that. It also does more. So this is one thing that might not be widely known or understood. Any module that's damaged, this could be your, currently the modules that can be damaged are your guns. So your main guns, your secondaries. I don't think the auto secondaries can be damaged. Your torpedo tubes definitely can be damaged. And your steering, which means you can't change the rudder, it's jammed, or the propulsion system, which happens a lot more after one of the recent updates, and that means your ship slowly stops because it has no engine power. So these module damages also can be repaired with a damage control kit. Now the other things that the damage control kit is doing, it's making you immune to fire and flooding for 10 seconds after it's been activated. So as long as the damage control kit is active, you cannot be set on fire or flooded again. This is actually relatively important if you're flying something like an aircraft carrier and you're triggering a damage control in a target. You actually have to wait 10 seconds before you go for the second punch and, let's say, try to trigger a flood after a fire. So you have to space out your things sufficiently, because within the 10 seconds while the kit's active, the target's actually going to be immune. So this also has a cooldown, but it's 60 seconds in this case. Now, when should you use these? Well, I've said already the repair kit, you should use it as early as possible. This, not so much, because of the fire mechanic mostly, and the flooding mechanic, obviously. If you let's say you get set on fire, or one of your secondaries gets shot off, you could use the damage control kit to fix the fire, and then you're not on fire. But if you are in a situation where you're being shot at by a ship that is very likely to set you on fire again, or for example, you're under attack by an aircraft carrier, and you see a second squadron coming in, potentially outside the 10-second immunity window, there's a fair chance that you get what we call a permafire, a permanent fire that you cannot extinguish and you need to let burn down. Or a permaflood, which does even more damage. Well, the fires, you can get up to 3 of them at the same time. So by using up your damage control for a single fire, you actually done yourself a disservice and made yourself a target. These are the standard consumables. Now, if we're looking at the commander skills, there are 3 commander skills that can affect how these consumables are operating. We have the high alert skill, which reduces the damage control kit cooldown time by 10%. So instead of 60 seconds, we've got 54 seconds until it becomes available again. So this can be rather useful. The survivalist increases the recovery by 15%. Now that's not going to be 15% points. You're not going to recover. Remember, it was 14.odd%. It's not going to be almost 30% health recovery with that skill. It's probably going to be 15% off the 14%. So it is a slight increase. But still, for ships that have a large health pool, so battleships, this can sometimes be a useful skill to have. And the third one is the Generalist, which gives us, on top of the 10-second immunity, the 25-second increased fire and flooding resistance. So effectively, it's a 15-second increased fire and flooding resistance because for 10 seconds after you've triggered it, you are immune anyway, so it's 100%. But after that, it's still 25% higher. And it actually recovers some hit points. So these are all very useful skills to have. Unfortunately, they obviously collide with some other extremely useful skills to have. So for example, in slot 3, you often want to have the preheating skill on things like destroyers or anything that has that needs to get off the ground very quickly at the beginning of the battle. Mostly this is a destroyer skill. The artillery maintenance for battleships is a very useful skill for the onset to have. So oftentimes the high alert is not a skill that you'll use all that often, although it can come in really, really useful if you're coming under concentrated HE spam, like from Smolensk, say. The survivalist skill on battleships, again, is a very, very nice skill to have, provided you don't need an additional rapid reload or precise aiming. So that's another collision that's... and for example, on the destroyer, you often want to have something like the Daredevil skill instead. The Generalist skill clashes with the Recon skill, which improves your sonar. Or with the Exploit Weakness, which is an important skill for ships that either use both torpedoes and guns or that are just HE spammers. This is a very useful skill to have because you are often going to be firing at ships that are on fire and flooding. This, by the way, works not just for your own targets, right? So if somebody else sets a ship on fire and you fire at that ship, that works as well. So this is an extremely useful skill to have in a lot of scenarios, but of course it clashes with these. So there's a question here if you want to build for these consumables more or if you want to use the other features. So in order to really decide, let's have a look of how you can use these consumables effectively such that you don't actually need to necessarily boost them. So in this battle here, I am playing in my Brooklyn, and we're in a bottom tier game up against a fair selection of enemy ships. I'm going to skip a little bit ahead and to when something's actually happening here. So I am accompanying a King George V battleship. And given that there are both planes and destroyers in the game, I am, standing guard here. Now, the King George V here is severely overexposing himself and rushing ahead. But I'm trying to stay both in cover and, because I am a bottom tier light cruiser, and have some help. There comes a Benson, who's determined to commit suicide by cruiser upon seeing me, apparently. So that's the thing. But we're also seeing, we're seeing the opening stages of the battle. We're starting to scout where the enemy team is. The destroyers are doing destroyery things. And once I've get clear of this island, I'm actually going to do something about that. So I'm not sure if the King George V there is running into some of the Benson torpedoes, but the Benson's very much dead at this point. And the Benson is on fire. He damage controls the fire, which isn't going to help him because he could have saved himself that damage control. This was 1,000 silver he didn't have to spend. And the King George V, I'm not sure again if he ran into torpedoes and has damage control the flooding, but he now starts getting shot at by an enemy Brooklyn, and takes flanking shots from the Richelieu from the left, and he's going to come under air attack because there's a carrier in the game. Now carriers love setting permafires and permafloods on ships. While I'm trying to catch up with the King George and provide some air cover, I'm too far behind. And there's a fire that he, by the looks of it, can't damage control, or he's just waiting. And there comes the flood. Now, if he had a damage control off cooldown, this would be the time to use it. Now, either he hasn't gotten them loaded, or it is on cooldown from an earlier flood from the torpedoes. We don't know that. But he's now in a crossfire of multiple HE spamming ships, plus he's under air attack, so yeah, he's now very, very dead. Which means that I am now the next best target for these guys, and I'm somewhat overexposed. Now, I haven't taken any damage so far, but now I'm having shots from the shores incoming. That's a triple fire, so I'm immediately damage controlling that, which means that my damage control is now active. But once the timer runs out, and you see that 1 second, and now it's on cooldown, this means that any fires that's going to be set now is going to stick, and I'm under fire by a shores and a Brooklyn, which means I am repairing right now. That's an early repair. This was actually I could have waited a little bit longer, but we are already at 4 minutes, so I wanted to trigger the repair just to get a couple of hit points back and get it off cooldown. Now I'm disengaging because I need to wait for my damage control to come off cooldown, because any fires that I get set now, or floods from the carrier, are going to be fatal. Now the Brooklyn is shooting armor piercing at me, and I'm shooting high explosive at the Brooklyn, because at 7 kilometer I can start, but that's a single fire on the Brooklyn. Now the Brooklyn damage controls the fire. What did I say about single fire damage controls? Which means that now within 10 seconds, like this salvo isn't going to set him on fire, but the timer is ticking. That salvo may not be setting him on fire quite yet, but yeah, I've got a 7.5 second reload, so yeah, it should be on cooldown. So his damage control is on cooldown, and he's within my secondary range. And there we go, double permafire. So these two fires are going to burn out. So what he should have done instead was to ignore the single fire and use the damage control when he gets the second fire. Now he's using armor piercing, which is the right thing to do, but because I know that his damage control is on cooldown, I am still using the high explosive on him, trying to set another fire, but these two fires are happily burning. Now the carrier is coming for me, and I do need to... I am getting a single fire, but I'm not damage controlling it, because you see these torpedo bombers there. Now I'm just dodging into the torpedoes, and I think I managed to do that. Yeah, so I got through the torpedoes. I could use my damage control now, but look at my fire. The little red circle on top of it tells me that it's almost burnt out already anyway. Now I could use my second repair party at this point, because, well, it is, like I said, it's fresh, it's ready, it's off cooldown. But we're 6 ships against 3, so the battle is pretty much decided at this point. I don't need to use it. I don't need to spend 1,000 silver just to heal back a little bit more, because I'm not getting shot at actively right now, and the battle is pretty much won at this point, probably anyway. Which means that I can save that. Oftentimes I see players like they're the last ship alive, and then the last 10 seconds they're still using a damage control or a repair party. Don't! It's just a wasted 1,000 silver. There's no need to do it. The battle's lost anyway. What are you trying to do? Give the enemy team more damage records. That's all you're achieving. So now I'm trying to set the West Virginia on fire, and it's just about mopping up these cruisers here. But yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So if I was in a situation now that I'm in fire, if I was going to be fired at by the West Virginia and the shores and the Brooklyn over there, I would have a heal ready. And the reason I have a heal ready is because I use that as early as possible to heal back things. So that's the shores, and then it's just a matter of mopping up the Brooklyn. And this is the one we inflicted some fire damage. For some reason I lost the lock on here, so these are going to miss pretty much, but second salvo is not, and that's a very dead Brooklyn. So this is how I am using damage control and repair kits. general rules, damage control as early as possible. The repair kit, don't repair single fires. Even damaged main guns, sometimes I don't, although they do take a while to repair. But if I can avoid, I don't. So I generally start using a repair kit, a damage control kit, when I've got double fires at least, or even a triple fire like we had just now. That's when I would use it. And then obviously I'm keeping an eye on my cooldown, because there's a timer on it and it tells me when it's going to be ready again. So if I am actively being shot at by ships that are trying to set me on fire, I disengage if I can. I get behind an island, I just get out of range, other things like that. Obviously it's easier in a very mobile ship like a cruiser, not so much in a battleship. But still you can, if you're getting, let's say you're getting shot at by a Smolensk and you got the double fire burning, you use the damage control kit, back away, get behind cover, right? Do things in order to avoid being set on fire again until your damage control kit is almost off cooldown, because then you're not going to suffer the effects of the multiple permafires. The same with planes. If the first dive bomber wave sets you on fire, and you see that there's a torpedo bomber wave coming in with probably longer than 10 seconds on approach, which have a pretty good chance of getting you flooded, don't damage control the single fire. Right? It's not that much damage from a single fire that you're preventing, and you're setting yourself up for losing a lot more health subsequently. So yeah, I just figured I'll explain all these bits a little bit, and how you can use these things to effect. And as you've seen, the other Brooklyn has paid dearly, right? Because we started with somewhat similar health, and it didn't end well for him. So keep that in mind. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye.